What's up, guys? This is John with Smooth Crypto, and on today's episode, I'm going to be showing you guys a blog video from the Litecoin Summit 2022. This was a conversation between Charlie Lee, Alan Austin, Jay Milla, Robbie Coleman, David Schwartz. This is the latest developments at Litecoin Foundation. I got part of it towards the end. It's from my point of view. I was recording. Sorry if the camera is shaking a lot. I didn't have my tripod at the time. I was just recording by hand, so that got a little hard after a while. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the angle that I got. I'll be posting some more speeches that I recorded later on, so I hope you guys enjoy this one. I'll catch you guys later.
And do you think that it'll help bring more profile to Litecoin in any way? I mean, with Ethereum being, what it is, it's what, number 3 capped, not including the stable coins. Do you think it'll bring any more, I guess, reputation towards proof of work and therefore by proxy Litecoin?
I think it'll take some time. I think over time, we'll see the strength of proof of work and why it's the best consensus system for a decentralized cryptocurrency.
Well, I mean, I don't want to go overboard here, but does anyone want to shout something out? Like a question, or I can bring the microphone around, do a little dance. Does anyone have a question? Because this is really about questions for you. Yes, sir.
It's a pretty simple question. So with the onset of crypto regulation that's coming, it's coming this year, late this year, perhaps next year. What is the probability of Litecoin being classified as a security? I mean, personally, I think it is 0, but I just want to hear your opinion on it. Litecoin is.
Well, a few people in the SEC, like Gary Gensler, has actually already come out to say Litecoin. He thinks Litecoin is a commodity, right? So I think it's close to 0. It'll be like if they said Bitcoin is a security. So Litecoin has no pre-mine. It's launched fairly. We have the Litecoin Foundation doesn't have Litecoins. We didn't print Litecoins out of thin air. We're not, very different from a lot of other coins. So I don't see Litecoin be classified as security. I don't think that ever happened.
I mean, it's probably the fairest launched cryptocurrency that's been created to date. I don't think I can think of anything else that would be fairer launched. So I think you're right. It's going to be 0.
I did want to make one announcement too. So Litecoin Foundation, was started in 2017. We are registered as a Singapore entity as a nonprofit. And as we talked about, probably 90+% of the revenue comes from donations. Earlier this year, we set up a US entity as well, Litecoin Foundation, Inc. And we are happy to announce we recently received a letter of determination from the IRS that we have as a 501c3. And which is pretty huge because it's right now, based on my conversations with the IRS and the person I was working with, it hasn't been that easy, especially when you're talking about cryptocurrency. But for anybody that doesn't know what that means, basically anyone in the US will be able to make their donation contributions are now tax deductible on their federal income tax returns.
So feel free to be generous.
And we'll be set up shortly to accept a donation in a variety of methods via our website and other ways. So.
That's a huge one. Well done, Alan.
Alan worked very hard on that. I think it's huge. Just because we're a nonprofit, supporting decentralized currency. So the community, any amount donated by the community would help us, and every amount donated would go towards our goal of adoption, education, and just supporting Litecoin. So thanks in advance of any donations.
That's a pretty salient thing just on that. Like, does anyone want to explain how we do spend the donations? Like, you touched on it there, but I guess the advent of MWeb didn't just happen overnight. Like, it was years of work in sponsoring developers like David Burkett. And does anyone want to expand on that, or is that fine to just leave it there? We'll leave it there. Does anyone else have other questions?
No, I'll expand.
No, go on. Thanks, Charlie.
So over the past 3 years, It's IRS, yeah. Over the past 3 years, we had a MWeb fund, right? We actually had the community donate towards paying for David Burkett. David Burkett's our lead developer of MWeb, paying for his salary.
Which you match dollar for dollar.
Yeah. So I match all the donation dollar for dollar. Since then, I actually don't remember how much total it is, but we paid David $6,000 a month, $72,000 a year for the past 3+ years, and all that came from that donation fund. And the Litecoin Foundation obviously will keep paying David to work on Litecoin and MWeb, even if we don't get more donations from that fund. But yeah, so a lot of the money we get, we just spend on developer to make Litecoin better. So thanks guys for helping out with that.
Well done. All right. Anyone who's closest to this man right there, close to the mic.
Mimba Wimble. I'm curious about the foundation's support for OmniLite, smart contracts, and NFTs. Is that still a priority, or is it mostly just Mimba Wimble these days?
Ooh.
Absolutely, it's a priority. Obviously, something like OmniLite is designed in a way so that people can develop themselves on it. So it's not necessarily us just developing on it directly, but Loshan is really the lead on that, and he's part of the foundation, and it's been his baby since day one. Obviously, there's a lot more other people, including Omni Bolt or whatever it was called, being involved in it. But it's there, it's accessible. If you want to find out more information about OmniLite, go to omnilite.org. You can make your own token that's going to be used on the Litecoin network, and NFTs.
Yeah, let me piggyback on that a little bit. So there are some individuals who have already taken OmniLite and tried to make some things out of it. So I don't know if you guys have heard of Liteverse, right? So Liteverse, you're able to actually have a Litecoin NFT marketplace. So if that's something you want to look into, you should look into that. You have people, individuals like Carlos Estrada, if you go back in here, back to the where the booths are, the young gentleman and his wife that are back there who created these incredible watches a lot of us are wearing, right? He's been able to figure out how to take a commodity like this, add NFTs to it, and do a lot of things using the resources that we're talking about today. And that goes back to, we need more than just investors. We need people who are invested. So we need people that can take the resources that we're creating or facilitating or helping donate towards making, and then utilizing them and creating things, some kind of an infrastructure that we can all use, because nobody else is going to help us do that.
I think that's a really interesting thing. I mean, I am not a technology person, and to be honest, have no real reason to be up here other than the fact that I worked in a creative space. So, I mean, you don't necessarily have to fit in software or technology or these sorts of things, which I think it's a bit of a miscomprehension to contribute towards Litecoin or its success, to necessarily be able to code or to be able to do certain things. So, whether it's via, any means of donation, whether it's your time or whether it's a small amount of money, but also just contributing in your own way. So creating, various products or an NFT on Liteverse, which is fairly simple from what I understand, but again, non-technical. Or, writing into Jay and applying to be a volunteer in some certain way. We're always looking for translators if anyone can translate into various languages. But yeah, it really is about an ecosystem. It's not just about a piece of technology. Sorry, just to go on about that. We had another question. This man.
Hi. Do you see any risk of the U.S. government banning MWeb just like they did with Ethereum Tornado Cash, specifically right now because of everything that's going on with Russia and Ukraine? Do you see them banning either the MWeb technology or trying to ban it or trying to ban Litecoin at all?
Well, without speaking for Charlie or anything, I don't see how you can ban a decentralized currency. You can probably try and put things in place to make it harder for somebody to utilize it, but that's the beauty of decentralized cryptocurrency, and that's the reason why we're here. I do think there's issues, and I know that Coin Center, for one, and a few others are trying to tackle those issues legally through lobbying up in DC, Tornado Cash. Just like anything, really, you can use it for good, you can use it for bad, and ultimately, Tornado Cash itself is not a bad thing. It's just a tool, right? And so, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to ban what's now considered a commodity in the United States or someplace else, when in reality, for somebody like me, I consider it a currency. The United States will never probably make it a currency, because why would you undercut what you already have? Right? So they're always going to list it as a commodity. But to see them say you can't utilize it at all, that's going to take a lot more than I think anybody really understands. And so I don't see that necessarily happening myself personally.
When there's a will, there's a way, I mean, is the short answer.
I think it's more of the question of what the crackdown might be on some exchanges, not the cryptocurrency itself. And that we've seen that happening in very limited exchanges, but there's always a small risk, but I don't, the fact that it's optional, I think will make ultimately the big difference. Referring to MWeb, that is. But I mean, at the end of the day, we have to focus on building the best money possible and not worrying about what has been basically a moving target, right? Regulations, because half the time they don't even, the people that are making these decisions don't even know what they're doing or what they're going to do next. So all we could do is build the best sound money. The piece that was sort of missing was that privacy layer. You now have it as an optional layer, and of course we keep in mind, that liquidity is important, and so that was part of the reason it kind of went optional, so that we can kind of walk that fine line while still really focusing on what's important to money.
I think it's really interesting when something new happens, everyone's worried that it'll get banned. But there's always someone out there who will find a way to make it happen, and I think with something that is, in the news and at risk of potentially being delisted or something like that, it's usually a good sign that it's doing something that nothing else is able to do. And I think the advent of opt-in confidential transactions is something which is really important for currency, and to make something like Litecoin and hopefully others like Bitcoin more currency-like. So hopefully we do get rid of the USD at some point or whatever.
Yeah, so one more thing on that, just a little insight on MWeb. I recall personally, and I know the rest of the guys up here probably do, but there were internal discussions on MWeb and what's the feasibility of it, and is this something we should be pursuing? So those discussions do happen, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, what are we doing here if we're not going to pursue this? And so that was the reasoning behind going forward with it, but it was also taken with a lot of thought and a lot of good, healthy conversations internally first, and making sure that it was something that was going to work out and wasn't going to just flop either.
But again, we don't make the decisions. I don't know if someone wants to explain the idea of
it's not necessarily like yes, it's more like, is this something that we want to try and pass through and see if everybody's in agreement with? It's not a foundation.
Charlie, do you want to maybe explain
per se.
Do you want to maybe explain signaling and how that works, and that it's we might come up with something, but obviously it's up to the community, everyone else supporting the network, to approve it.
Yeah. So the way MWeb, I kind of proposed it. The community was really receptive of it, so we worked on implementing it. But at the end of the day, the miners have to signal that they support it, right? It has to go through. The miners have to mine blocks that support MWeb, and if there are enough miners supporting it, it will activate. So that actually happened earlier this year, where you can see miners signaling that they support MWeb, and when there's 75% of the mine blocks supporting MWeb, it will activate the next cycle. So it took some time for all the miners, which are decentralized all over the world, to upgrade to the latest code and start supporting and start signaling MWeb.
That's another way you can support as well. So, if you want to upgrade to the latest code, and if you want to put a bit of money on the MWeb chain, that'd be much appreciated.
Yeah, that was actually one of the questions that you got when we put this panel together and put it out publicly was, how can I get involved? People were asking, what else can I do to get involved? And I would say, propose ideas, write content, or if you have content that you want to share, send it to me, and maybe it can be published. Maybe it can be published by the foundation, maybe it can be published by just a social link that you're already hosting it. Use our shop. Michelle runs the shop, and we sell Litecoin merchandise and things like that. The proceeds to that go to supporting things like that. I know there's a lot of people out there that put Litecoin on a t-shirt and they sell it. That's great. But if you happen to want to support MWeb as well, and you want to support some of the other programs that we're doing, using our shop is a real great way to do that. And help in other ways. If you see that the summit's coming up, there's a whole bunch of people that came up and said, what can I do to help? And they volunteered, and they're here helping us do this. So there are a plethora of ways that people in the community can come forward and really help.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for listening. Thank you very much for coming, and thanks to the volunteers, and thank you to, I guess, the directors of the Litecoin Foundation and everything you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.